Hi, I'm Emily, and I am here with Maya Murphy's attorney, Eva Marie Franco Fox. Attorney Fox practices at Maya Murphy's Westport, Connecticut office and is admitted to practice law in both Connecticut and New York. My question today for Attorney Fox is, my partner is pressuring me to sign a prenuptial agreement right before a wedding. What are my rights?
This is an important question, Emily. Thank you for asking it. Generally, in Connecticut, there is no obligation for a party to enter into a prenuptial or a postnuptial agreement, and certainly there's no obligation to enter into one of these agreements or any other contract against your will. In order for a contract to be valid in Connecticut, a party must enter into it voluntarily and knowingly. And a prenuptial and a postnuptial agreements are contracts, and so that requirement applies to both a prenup and a postnup. So in order to, for the court to assess whether or not an agreement was entered into voluntarily, it would look at a number of factors. It would try to assess whether one of the parties entered into the agreement with under duress, if they were coerced into entering into it, if they were under any undue influence. So certainly, if any of these factors are present, the court would say that the contract was not entered into voluntarily, and therefore it's not enforceable. And the court can invalidate the entire agreement. So one of the factors that a court would look into and certainly evaluate if there is a claim that the contract was entered into involuntarily is the timing between when the contract was presented to the individual and the wedding and when the person signed the contract and the wedding. And generally, the closer in proximity to when the contract was presented or when the person signed the agreement and when the wedding was, the more likely it is that a court may say, yes, you entered into this under duress or under some kind of coercion, and you did not enter into it voluntarily. So, by way of example, if an individual is surprised with a prenuptial agreement on the morning of their wedding, a court may say, yes, you very likely were under some kind of duress. You did not have sufficient time to evaluate, review, and consider whether or not you truly wanted to enter into this contract. And there may be other factors at play. For example, you're under pressure to go through with the wedding because all of the guests are arriving. People have already invested money, spent money that they can't get refunded to them if you cancel the wedding on the day of the day of. So that's a situation where a court is more likely to say, yes, there was duress here, or the person otherwise didn't enter into the agreement voluntarily. As opposed to a situation where an individual was presented with a contract perhaps months and months in advance of the wedding, and they had time to review it, consider it, perhaps even retain counsel to review it with them, and even renegotiate certain terms. In that situation, a court is more likely to say, you understood the agreement, you knowingly entered into it, you certainly had plenty of time to consider it, and so you entered into it voluntarily. Again, this is a fact-specific inquiry. The circumstances can vary from case to case, and so what may be considered voluntary in one case may be considered involuntary in another case. Another important reason why timing is so important, why the court will certainly conduct an analysis into it in Connecticut, is because under Connecticut law, the parties are entitled to a reasonable opportunity to consult with independent counsel. It doesn't mean that they need to actually consult or hire an attorney, but it does mean that they have the right to have the opportunity to do so if they wish to. And so if you're presented with an agreement on the morning of your wedding, for example, you may not have a reasonable opportunity to go out and find counsel and get advice from counsel. Another reason why timing is important is because under Connecticut law, the parties are entitled to a fair and reasonable financial disclosure. And perhaps if you've only had a couple of hours to review an agreement, you don't have sufficient time to engage in that financial disclosure that the law requires. And so the timing is really critical for a number of reasons. It goes to whether or not you're voluntarily signing, but it also goes to a number of the other factors that the court would consider in evaluating whether or not the agreement was voluntarily entered into and whether or not it's therefore enforceable. So it's important, if you're in this situation, to consult with an attorney and to share your concerns as far as really feeling pressured or under some kind of duress or coercion as far as signing the agreement. An alternative, if you don't have sufficient time before the wedding to fully negotiate and review the agreement or engage in proper financial disclosure, is to enter into a postnuptial agreement. And that's an agreement that can be entered into after the date of marriage. That gives the parties additional time to negotiate the terms and really feel comfortable with the agreement prior to executing, which would later hopefully defeat any challenges to the agreement based on duress or undue influence or anything of that nature.